So now that we kind of know the general rundown of the three different categories of movements, we could break those down further into squatting movements, pressing movements, and pulling movements, and that's something that we're constantly analyzing in our own programming. That we want those to all be well-rounded. But next, we're just going to go over CrossFit's theoretical template for programming, and it's broken down this way so that over the course of 12 days, we've had a really well-rounded experience, and no one element is being programmed more than the other, or to favor another, unless we decide to do that. And so instances where we might decide to do that is if, as a gym, we've noticed that, hey, as a whole, we're not as good at pressing movements, so maybe we'd skew our programming to do more pressing movements, or if we're not as good cardiovascularly, maybe we're emphasizing that during our programming. But the theoretical template is run on a 12-day schedule. So on day 1, you'll see that there's an M there. That's the monostructural day. So that would be a long duration effort where we're working on cardiovascular endurance. On day 2, you see a GW, that's gymnastics and weightlifting day. That's typically thought of as a high-skill gymnastics movement paired with a high-power weightlifting movement. So that weightlifting movement is not necessarily something that's super high-skilled, but the gymnastics is. So it's a day to practice skill, and then also increase that intensity with a relatively simple-to-learn or simple-to-practice weightlifting movement. On day 3, you see a MGW, okay, and what that is that's one of our longer AMRAPs. The concept here is that there's no movement in that workout that's so complicated or so challenging that we can't just continue to move, and that's typically the 20-minute AMRAP day. The goal there is to just get a well-rounded workout that you're moving for 20 minutes, you're building some of that stamina, cardiovascular endurance that's necessary to be fit. In the perfect CrossFit programming world, and if you ever follow the CrossFit main site, you'll notice that they do 3 days on, 1 day off. And in a perfect world, we'd take that 4th day off and just relax and do nothing. So for our gym, we run on a weekly schedule, so on seven days a week, and we sort of program in during the week that there's 1 day that's significantly lighter, so that those athletes who are unlimited members, they can show up every day and they're getting the programming that they deserve and need. So day 5, we move on to gymnastics only. So this is what typically is felt like it's, hey, this is a lighter day, but it's high skill. And so the intensity on this day is not so much in a conditioning factor or necessarily a strength factor, but it's in learning new skill and your body learning how to adapt from that. Day 6 is MW. Now we're working on monostructural movement again, along with a complicated weightlifting movement. So that may be a clean or a jerk or a snatch, something where the skill is significantly higher and we're challenging your ability to stay coordinated and skilled after a metabolic effect. Okay, day 7 goes back to that MGW. That's another longer AMRAP. Theoretically, again, we take another day off. And then on day 9, we get to a weightlifting movement. So that's either one of two things. It's super high skilled, or it's a heavy load day. So it can technically be both, but the idea there is that we're building a new skill and building some strength there. Day 10, MG, it's another high skill gymnastics being challenged by conditioning. Day 11, MGW, it's another longer AMRAP where we're never really having to stop. And day 12 is a rest day. So like I said, we're not necessarily doing that exact programming in our classes just because our schedule is a little bit different. And we'll talk more about that momentarily.